Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ولعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. In our last session, we talked about the definition of Islamic laws and the categories that Islamic laws are divided into, and that is injunctive laws and declaratory laws. And we talked about the definitions of the declaratory laws and the injunctive laws. And we also talked about that the injunctive laws are divided into 5 categories, and that is obligation, recommendation, prohibition, abomination, and permission. So today, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to talk about that who can we follow as a jurist? What are the conditions that has to be there in order to follow a jurist? So our question would be, who can you follow? What conditions should be there in a person whose taqleed we can do? There are 10 conditions that has to be there in a person in order to be followed. What are those 10 conditions in a jurist? Jurist. 10 conditions should be there. Number 1, he should be a baligh, someone who has come to the age of legal responsibility, someone who has hit puberty. This is the first condition that should be there in a jurist. So that means a person who is a child or a kid, he cannot be followed. Second condition that should be there in a jurist is that he should be sane. So a person who is not sane, either permanently or occasionally, he cannot be followed. Number 3, he should be a 12-er Shia, a mu'min, a 12-er Shia. This is the third condition. So a person who is a Shia. First of all, a person who is not a Shia, he cannot be followed. Secondly, someone says he's a Shia, but if he's not a 12-er Shia, then he cannot be followed. Fourth condition that should be there is ijtihad. He should be someone who is a mujtahid, who is able to ascertain laws on the basis of proof. Number 5, he must be a male. So if a woman comes to this stage of ijtihad, she may be a 12-er Shia or a baligh and a sane, but she cannot be followed because one of the conditions that is there in order to be a jurist for others to follow him is that he should be a male. Number 7, he should be of legitimate birth. So a person who is out of the legitimate birth, he cannot be followed. Number 8, I guess 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry. Number 7. Number 7, he should be having precision of accuracy and memory. What do we mean by that? He should be someone who is generally, who's according to his precision and accuracy is according to precision and accuracy that is generally accepted in the society. He doesn't have to be very intelligent. His precision and accuracy, it doesn't have to be very high standards, but it should be something that is generally accepted. So if someone who is forgetful, if someone who forgets things a lot, then that kind of person cannot be a jurist. Number 8, he should be a person who is adil, just. So a person who follows the Islamic laws steadily, that kind of person is called just. That kind of person is adil. So, but if a person commits sin, as soon as he commits a sin, then his justice is lifted, his adala is lifted, he is not just anymore. But it can come back if a person asks for forgiveness from sincerity, and he means when he is asking for forgiveness. Let's just make space for 9 and 10 here. 9. Alive. Someone who has just hit puberty, someone who's just come to the legal age now, someone who has just become baligh, he cannot follow a mujtahid or a jurist who is not alive, who is a dead mujtahid. Number 1. Number 2, what about someone who is following a jurist but he passes away? So can he stay on him? Can he keep doing his taqleed? He can, in one condition, and that is if the dead mujtahid, the mujtahid that is not alive, the jurist that is not alive, is a'lam, is more learned than the one who is alive. So the most learned mujtahid that is alive, if that is ascertained by the scholars and Ahl al-Khibra, that he is the most learned scholar, is the most learned jurist right now. If the dead mujtahid, the mujtahid who is not alive, is more knowledgeable than him, then that person who had already started following him can stay on his taqleed. But a person who's just hit puberty, who's going to start doing taqleed now, can he start following someone who's not alive, a mujtahid that is not alive, a jurist who is not alive? No, he cannot. Number 10, the most learned. He should be the a'lam, the most learned, just not a mujtahid. Being a mujtahid is not enough. A lot of time people think that someone who is a mujtahid, someone who has studied a lot, someone who has been in Hawza for X amount of years, is someone you can follow. All of these conditions, baligh, seyed, 12 or Shia, ijtihad, male of legitimate birth, precision of accuracy and memory, being just, being adil, he should be alive, and the most learned person right now, he should be the one. If all of these qualities are there, then he is the one that should be followed. It's hujjah, it's the authority on the people to follow him. That brings us to our next question, and that is, how to know who is a mujtahid or the most learned. How to know, how to identify someone is a mujtahid, someone is the most learned. What are the ways to know this? This is something you must be wondering too. Can you believe anyone who tells you that this is the most learned jurist? Or there are specific ways devised by the Sharia that you have to follow in order to identify who is a jurist, who is the most learned. Number one, so we're talking about the most learned, a'lam, or mujtahid, someone who has done ijtihad. The first way to know is a duty-bound person, a mukallaf, is certain himself that someone is a mujtahid or the most learned. How does that happen? So if a person is a scholar and he is someone who is able to identify that he is a mujtahid, he is the most learned person, he is the alam, or that one is not. So if he comes to the stage of certainty, sorry, this is R. If he comes to the stage of level of certainty, he has yaqeen. A person who's a mukallaf has yaqeen. Okay, we're talking about the stage of certainty. There are 4 stages. The highest stage is certainty, yaqeen. The second level is zan, opinion. The third level is doubt, shak. The 4th level is fahm, estimation. Estimation, you should know, is from 0 to 1% to 49%. All of that is estimation. All of that is fahm. 50% is shak, doubt. 50% to 99% is opinion, zan, 100% is yaqeen. So if someone has certainty, someone has yaqeen that XYZ is a'lam, XYZ is the most learned, or XYZ is mujtahid. In both cases, these are two different cases. So in this case, he can follow that person in the case of most learned. Second way to know about this is to learn it and dutify. Two people who are dutiful, who are adil, who are learned, all right, confirm, testify that XYZ is a'lam, is the most learned, given that two other dutiful, adil, and learned do not disagree. So what do we mean by it? That, for example, if two dutiful and learned testify, confirm that he is the most learned, he is a'lam, is that good enough to be the jurist? Is this confirmation good enough? No. Unless and until two other dutiful and learned do not disagree with his statement, then this testimony is good enough to be followed. Okay. Number 3 is if one Ahl al-Khibra, one expert, he gives the testimony, he says, he confirms that XYZ is A'lam, the most learned, then you can also take his statement. Now the question is, who is Ahl al-Khibra? Ahl al-Khibra is someone who is a mujtahid himself, not just a mujtahid, someone who is been the teacher of the Hawza, have been teaching the Hawza students, and teacher of the Hawza, and is a mujtahid, have been given bahth kharij, the highest level of dars in Hawza. That kind of person is called Ahl al-Khibra. So if someone gains confidence someone gains itminan by rational means, not by irrational means, then that confidence is good enough too. How can you gain confidence? You gain confidence, you gain itminan. For example, you meet a group of scholars, you meet 10 different scholars, you meet 20 different scholars, and all of them, or most of them, told you that XYZ is the most learned jurist. You should follow XYZ. So in that case, because of listening it from 10, 20 scholars, different scholars, who are reliable scholars, the result is that you have itminan, that you have confidence. So this confidence is now hujjah on you, authority on you, and then you can follow that jurist. Inshallah, this is clear. Now, let's move to our next question. كان مقلد follower of a certain jurist follow some other jurist too. So there's a person who is following someone, any certain marja, any certain jurist is following him. Is he allowed to follow other jurists too, or not? If a mujtahid gives a fatwa, if his jurist gives a fatwa, then he is not allowed to consult or to do ruju to any other marja. If his mujtahid, if his jurist, if his marja has given a fatwa. If the jurist has given the fatwa, then not allowed. By the way, what do we mean by muqallid? A muqallid, we mean a follower who's following a certain marja or mujtahid, someone who's doing taqleed. If the jurist has given the fatwa, he says it is obligatory for you to act upon this thing. He says it is unlawful for you to refrain to do this. So you have to refrain from this. If he has given a fatwa, then not allowed. But yeah, in some cases it's allowed. When it is allowed? Allowed in some matters. What are those matters? Number one, if the jurist does not give a fatwa, rather he says that on the basis of precaution, you should do such and such action. On the basis of precaution, you should do such and such action. If he uses the statement like this and some other statements like this, then you have two options. Either to follow that precaution, or to do ruju, or to consult the next most learned marja, not anyone. The next most learned marja you can follow only and only in that matter, in that ruling. Alright? If he says that on the basis of precaution. So, what are the terminologies that you will find in the book of law? For example, obligatory precaution. الاحتياط الواجب. Then necessary precaution. الاحتياط اللازم. Then if the mujtahid says he deliberates on some matter, it's a matter of ta'ammul, then you have the option to follow the next most learned jurist. Or if he says, for example, in a matter problematic, it's mahal al-ishkal, then also you have the option to follow some other, the next most jurist. Or in a case when one does not have access. What do we mean by this? One does not have access to the fatwa of his jurist. He does not know the ruling of the jurist and he has to act upon it. There are two things that should be there. He does not know the ruling, number one. Number two, he does not have access to the ruling. He cannot have access to the ruling and does not know. One does not have access to the ruling and he does not know the ruling. In both of the cases, he has, when both of the cases are there, then he has the option to follow the next most learned jurist. So these are the questions that we have addressed today. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll meet in our next session with more Islamic rulings. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.